Thanks for coming out and being here. Sorry, going to ring up a little bit. So just to give you a little backstory, my name is Lizzy. My mom runs the teen and young adult meetups, and I'm 23, and I'm homeschooled, youngest of 5 siblings, and I kind of grew up around the Seattle area and just recently moved to this area 5 years ago, about-ish.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lily Allman. We're not related, but our names are very similar, and it's a little bit confusing. I'm also 23, and I'm also from the Seattle area, and I also moved over, I think it was 4 years ago for us. I am a local business owner. I run an entertaining video marketing business called Deliberate Video. So that's been one of my biggest interests throughout my life, and that's kind of what helped us to be able to start in the Know, Idaho. So Lizzy, her sisters, her mom, and I decided that we wanted to make these short videos to help educate people about how they can be involved and what kind of effect that has, and how even if you don't have a lot of time, there's still little things you can do.
Yeah, because my mom was starting the young adults meetups and the teen meetups, as we were starting to talk about it as friends about government and about all the issues that's going on, and something that kept coming up was, I don't feel like I know very much about government. I don't know much about politics or civic duty, and my mom was doing the meetups, and we were just like, I feel like this should be on social media. This should, and when you think about education or like researching government and politics, you're just kind of like, that sounds really boring and tedious. And your business is about like social media marketing, and so you had a lot of thoughts about like, as we were becoming more involved, that's when like primaries were starting, and so we were talking a lot about campaigns and how it feels like campaigns, social media tactics aren't really built for social media as much, and so you were really passionate about bringing education and government and talking about these issues to social media. And so we started a TikTok channel, and we're also on Instagram and on YouTube, and you can find all of that. There's a flyer on the table over there that will take you to all of our social media handles. But
Yeah, that's all accurate. Yeah, we really just wanted to fill what we felt was a gap in social media content for conservatives, but even more specifically, like the Kootenai County area. Like, we're talking about what we're learning and observing here in our city. And so for any other young people who maybe you don't have time to come to events like these very often, it's kind of a way to just keep you in the know about what's going on. So yeah, I'm sure there are flyers, and then we also have cool stickers, because we're trendy like that. So you can take one of those too, or if you know anyone who you think needs to be aware of this.
And another reason that I personally wanted to start this and do this was I wanted to show that there are young people who care and are concerned and have conservative values. I know there are some young people on social media who are talking about all the stuff that's going on in our country, but it seems like there's very few, and it doesn't seem very popular to be involved. And so I wanted to be, just show that there are young people. I wanted to. It's not just old people who are concerned about that. Because all of these affect all of us, and so all of us, no matter what age we are, should care. So that's another big reason that I personally wanted to be involved and do something. So we thought we would each kind of like tell our stories about why we're involved.
What got us to this point?
Yeah, what got us to our point, or this point. Yeah. So for me, it's mostly because of my mom. Let me see. Yeah, because my mom was adopting principles from the Empowered Hearts Ministry. She learned how to be interested in me, and she showed me how to be interested in my siblings, because I have 5 of them, or 4 of them, sorry. And because she showed me how to be interested in my siblings, it led to all of us siblings having strong relationships, and it led to us forming a film production company together. So I have a film background. That's what I do. I'm a screenwriter and a production designer for Abundant House Films. So because I had that relationship with my siblings and then with my mom, it led me to be interested in my mom in return. And one of her interests was government. So Rush Limbaugh was a familiar voice when I was growing up, and I was always trying to read the funny-looking political cartoons that were in magazines. And I would ask lots of questions, wanting to know and understand what they all meant, and my mom would break it down for me and help little 9-year-old me understand what was going on. To this day, some of my strongest memories are conversations where my mom would explain things about government and economics and her views and beliefs about political issues. Because of the relational connection that I had with my parents, I adopted their values for myself and was able to take those values with me, even as I was involved in the extremely liberal Seattle film community. When that began, when I was around 14, that I began to be involved in the film community. And so I'm very grateful that my parents didn't just leave me to figure everything out and out on my own, and especially in this day and age where there's a lot of confusion and lack of guidance about morals and values in society. So, our family moved to Idaho in 2019, and me and my family, we were gearing up to start shooting our first feature-length film in March 2020. We had locations and actors and crew lined up, and we were a week away from our first day of shooting when COVID hit and Washington shut down. We lost 3 major locations after trying to figure out if we could, so we lost 3 major locations. We were trying to figure out if we could still make things work, find replacements, but we made the decision to shut down and postpone shooting since Idaho was soon to follow in the shutdowns. But it was during COVID that it became more clear to me that, it matters who our governor is. It matters who our mayor is. Who was currently in office determined how much freedom I could have. And seeing the difference between here and Washington was really eye-opening. And even here in Idaho, it was eye-opening to see the difference between, Coopey County would say something different than the city of Coeur d'Alene about masks and mandates. And it was just I began to see how my local government officials could affect my everyday life, and that infringement upon my rights was starting to come dangerously close and very, very real. And I didn't like what was happening with all the mandates and the forced vaccines, but I didn't know what to do about it. It was sobering to realize that things I didn't agree with were, they were happening right here where I live, not just out there in the country somewhere. I began to feel an urgency. I knew that I should be involved, because we all have a duty to be involved in governmental civic affairs, but I didn't see a way. I thought getting involved might mean that I have to get aggressive and confrontational with people, or take up too much of my time. I didn't feel like I really understood how my local government worked or how I could have an impact on it. So I was just kind of stuck wanting to do something, but not really having a way forward. So when the vaccine mandates started showing up, my mom began getting involved locally. She herself didn't know all that was going on, but she decided to take the first step and just start where she could, immersing herself and educating herself along the way. I wanted to come too, because I wanted to be involved, but I was honestly a little intimidated, But my mom encouraged me to just come and listen, to be an extra body in the room, even if I didn't understand everything that was going on. Just because I attended an event didn't mean, like I'd have to get up and speak in front of a whole bunch of people. So,
Like you are now.
like I am now.
Yes.
So the first event I attended with my mom was with some doctors and candidates for the upcoming election, and they were talking about their stances on vaccines. And even though I didn't know who any of the people who were speaking, at the time I didn't even know there was an election coming up, I was glad I went because I just learned so much. And I'm so glad that I went specifically with my mom because I'm pretty sure I was the youngest person in the room. And my mom also answered all the questions that I would feel dumb, asking anybody else. And I walked away feeling empowered, knowing that there were other people wanting to stand up for their values, and I was more confident now that I had some, at least a little bit more knowledge to fill in the huge blanks. I went to a protest, and it was actually kind of fun to hold signs and wave the cards. My mom and I attended a North Idaho Freedom Fighters volunteer meeting, and we got to meet Amy and hear her story. We went to some of the business meetups, and I attended a city council meeting and was able to meet local candidates. Lilly and some other friends of ours began to attend more of these events, but we were always in the extreme minority. And,
As far as age goes.
Yeah, as far as age goes, yeah. We began talking about civic duty as friends, and what kept coming up was our lack of education, especially on local government, and how that was a drawback on our desire and our ability to be involved. So it was really cool when my mom started the meetups. She would talk about the local branches of government and the young adult meetups, and then I would get to meet candidates who were running for those offices. I could put a face to this ambiguous office. And then we decided to start in Idaho, and it has pushed me to become bold, walking up to candidates and asking them for an interview, and something I never thought I would be doing, and inspired me to keep learning and challenging passive mindsets that I've had about civic duty. So, I used to think that I didn't have the power or knowledge to change anything, that there wasn't anything I could do that would have an impact. I'm not a senator or a court justice who has the ability to affect the whole nation. I am just one person after all, one voice, and I can't control other people. But if there's anything that I've learned from my parents and through my walk with God, is that the only person that I can control is myself. James Monroe once said, "There is a price tag on human liberty. That price is the willingness to assume the responsibilities of being free men. Payment of this price is a personal matter with each of us." So, I have to take personal responsibility. I can't wait around for someone else to start. It's my duty to be educated enough to evaluate and care about matters bigger than myself, even if it is just my local community. If I want to see change happen, the place to start is with my mindset, my education, my time, even if it is just a tiny amount, and my relationships. Even if I am just one person, I still have a role to play, and I think that is one of the greatest privileges and responsibilities that I have as an American. That was so nice. Such a good story.
Yeah. It's funny because, well, Lizzy and I have a lot of similarities. So this is my story because I wanted to share that with you as well. Because one of the biggest things that, let me read this to you. I don't want to get ahead of myself. So I was born and raised in Seattle, and like I said, we moved over in 2018. And one of the first things that I noticed when I moved to Idaho was how few people my age I saw. Maybe we just don't run in the same circles, but no matter where I went, I felt like I was surrounded by people who were in a different stage of life than me. And I think there are a lot of different reasons for that. Like obviously, people my age are busy with college or traveling or whatever they want to do. But I think it's also true that a lot of young people our age, grow up and decide that they don't share their parents' values and end up leaving conservative cities. When I crossed the border into Spokane, there's young people everywhere, so yeah, just something I noticed. And when I talk to people about what I'm learning about America, I get comments like, it's so refreshing to see young people. I wish my kids were like you. I had someone tell me that I was more mature in my thinking than their full-grown coworkers in Seattle, which was a big compliment, but a little bit scary. I've heard lots of people say that their kids don't share their values or have any desire to be involved. And so I've been considering what got me to the point of wanting to be involved like this, performing what I believe is simply my civic duty. Obviously, this kind of education and involvement in local affairs takes time and sacrifice. Not super appealing to a lot of people my age, especially when the Democrats know how to throw a party. So it does boil down to the core belief of personal responsibility, believing that life will be better if we can govern ourselves. So I want to share where I think the difference was for me in my upbringing, and I hope it's inspiring because personal responsibility is something that anyone is free to choose. So I'm the oldest of 4 siblings, not quite as many as Lizzy, still a few. And we were also homeschooled, and being homeschooled, I have the benefit of having bypassed most of the rewritten history and other nonsense that I hear they're teaching in schools these days. And growing up, we got to take trips to the Clarkston area. So on our road trips, I got to see Republican-run cities, and then I would compare it to my home, which was, of course, a Democrat-run city. So I got to see the contrast between the quality of life in the two. And I liked living in Seattle well enough that I didn't realize how messed up it was until after we moved. As a family, we got to a point where our vision for our life didn't match our geographical location. We wanted property for a farm, and we were very intrigued by the idea of moving to a place where we were surrounded by people who had similar views. So in 2018, well, I already told you that, but we moved to Idaho. When we moved, we were shocked at how many people waved at you and smiled at you and talked to you at the grocery store. And I had to get used to the feeling of living in a community that looked out for each other. Growing up, I was taught to watch my back because you never knew who was walking down the street. But here I know that no matter where I am, someone's probably packing and knows how to handle anything. While I had been exposed to conservative ideas growing up, there were still lots of pieces missing. In Seattle, I hardly did any research when voting, and I didn't pay attention to what happened afterwards. I knew my stances on things, in quotations, because of what my parents and my grandparents shared with me, but I couldn't explain why those were my stances. That's a really big thing for me. I was just repeating what I heard, knowing that there was some truth to it. I hated history growing up. I tried to force myself to learn, but I just didn't care, and it just wasn't sick. I did have some respect for America, though, because of the way I heard people talk about it. My grandma is a missionary to West Africa, so I grew up hearing about the wars and disease and poverty there, and I understood that Americans had it better than much of the world. I understood that it was a privilege to have a vote, because in some countries you have no say. I understood that people in the military were ready to die protecting me and my good life. When I was a teenager, I remember my dad telling me that when someone wants to become an American citizen, they have to take a test, and if they don't know their stuff, they don't get to become a citizen. And I remember thinking, I probably wouldn't pass that test. Why do I get to be a citizen now? It sparked the thought that I was pretty unworthy of this gift of living in the greatest country in the world if I couldn't even answer basic questions about it. So back to the place where lots of stories start. When COVID hit and my freedoms started vanishing, I suddenly became very interested in how America worked and started asking a lot of questions, like, is the president even allowed to lock down the country? Why are we trying to hide from the virus? How does it communicate? Why does Facebook fact check my thoughts? How can you be prohibited from gathering in a free country? And the biggest question on my mind was, when did we turn into a bunch of dummies? Never having had my freedom infringed on so blatantly, I understood that the whole situation was very wrong and decided that it was time to learn how to fight for my freedoms. It was clear that the people who were holding the line for me were losing. I watched live streams of local government meetings trying to figure out who was in charge of what, because I needed to know who actually had legal authority over my movements and my breathing. I started reading, I know. I started reading our founding documents and learned just how many freedoms our country has already given up over the years. It was sobering to realize that in my ignorance, I was on course to go down with a ship I didn't know was sinking. In fact, I was making it heavier, while the educated people tried to keep America afloat so that we wouldn't lose the freedoms that generations have died to secure and protect. My passivity was actively working against them. Thank goodness for COVID, because it woke me up, but I believe that I wouldn't have been willing to acknowledge my part in the poor condition of my country if I hadn't first learned that lesson in the context of my family. When I was a teenager, my mom was searching for answers because us kids were growing up very selfish and our family was unhappy. We were always annoyed with each other and treated friends like they were way better, and just generally treated each other like the bottom of the barrel. My mom knew that there must be a way to become a close, happy family like she'd always hoped for, and she discovered Empowered Hearts Ministries, which totally changed the course of our future, and it's also how I met Lizzy. My mom learned that she had to teach us how to take responsibility for our part in the sad state of our relationships, because we were all at fault in one way or another. When she started doing this with me, I didn't want to own up to my ugly thoughts towards my siblings. I knew that I was in the wrong, but I wanted my siblings to change so that I wouldn't have to. How human of me. My little sister took the high road before I did. She started offering to do things with me that I was interested in, even though she didn't particularly like them. I was so moved by how she was making an effort to be a good sister to me that I chose to acknowledge the hard truth that I was part of the problem too. The healing began right away, and as each one of us has learned how to do this, we've become closer than ever and happier than we ever thought possible. So in the same way that I had to acknowledge how I helped to cause the sad state of my family relationships, I had to acknowledge how I helped to cause the sad state of my country. In 2020, I finally realized that if I wasn't among America's freedom fighters, I was burdening them with responsibilities that were supposed to be mine. I used to judge and blame and complain about the government because I was dissatisfied with how things were, but I wasn't willing to take any action, so I was also judging, blaming, and complaining about myself without knowing it. I used to look at the world and say things like, if everybody would just vote, if everybody would just worry about themselves. Well, everybody wants to change the world, but I had to start with me. When I decided to take action by becoming just another informed citizen who knows her rights, I filled a role that only I could fill. And I'm doing what I can to defend America and what she stands for. And it's not much, but I believe these things have a ripple effect.
Wow. Right?
So we didn't just want to like show up and talk about, you know,
What was that?
we didn't want to just show up with nothing prepared.
Yeah, you're very prepared. Yeah, this is amazing. Say it again. Okay.
Okay, so to refresh your memory, and if you want to become more educated on how to get involved in local government affairs, In the Know Idaho is social media channels where we share short videos about things that we're learning, basically.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, and then there's also a flyer for Empire Hearts Ministries.
Yep.
So learn more about that.
Awesome stuff. Thank you. Oh my gosh.
Let's give them another round of applause.